welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to be looking at this book. So this is Welcome to Kaya's World, 1764, Growing Up in a Native American Homeland. So this is a nonfiction book about I think I've been pronouncing this, the Nez Perce. I think I was saying Nez Perez. I don't know. I was mispronouncing it. Or the Nimi Poo, which is more correct. So this, it starts off with a glossary of their words, which is yes in all their books. But then it goes over a couple different things. So you get kind of a introduction to their people and her world, where the Bitter Root Mountains, which is pretty much where she lived, and her world. And then it talks about how by the time the white man came, because all of this happens, Kaya would have been, she would have been in her 50s. So she would have been an elder herself. So she may or may not have witnessed the complete destruction of her people. So, but the first chapter, we have their creation myth, which is how Coyote created the Nimi Poo, which involves murder, as always. What does he kill here? Monsters? Yeah, there's a monster who is eating up everybody. He gets himself swallowed, and he irritates everybody inside, and then rips out the monster's stomach and throws everything to the winds and chooses to sprinkle the blood in these mountains, and this is where the Nimi Poo were. Then it goes to talks about the ancient homeland, so it shows where their, the Nez Perce or the Nimi Poo homeland, which actually takes up a good portion of Oregon. Here, let's see if I can show you. See, the red part that is their homeland. So that is what it is. It talks about the river. It talks about a little bit more about Coyote. Then it moves on to talking about the horses and how they came to the horses and the ceremonies involving the horses, and how when the white man came and the pioneers came, their horses mixed with them and lost some of what they bred for them, and the slimness and the sheer, they lost the, what on earth here? Yeah, the swiftness, speed, and part of what made I keep calling it Nez Perce. Well, I think it is Nez Perce. Nez Perez or Nez Perce people, their horses prized. But now what they've done is they bred them with this, and I cannot pronounce it, this Asian horse, so they're recreating it now. And then it talks about how they're on the move, and you get this picture of what it looks like inside the teepee, and it talks about how it's arranged and the families and things and what it looks like. And then it talks about the life in the longhouses. This is where they wintered and different things, and how they made these things and how they constructed them. Then it talks about babies and how babies were protected, and they were in their cradle boards and things, and how then it talks about many names, and you kind of get a taste of this in her books, where their first name is something their mother names them when they're born, and then they get other names as they get older. And it also talks about how twins are considered very important, and this is relevant to Kaya's story because she has twin brothers, her twin little brothers. Then it talks about play with a purpose, how the girls and the boys would learn to construct toys and little horses and various different things as practice for when they got older. It talks about strong minds and bodies. It talks about how, and this is mentioned frequently, they bathe in the river. Winter, summer, spring. Completely naked, as you would. But that's how they would, and then they did a lot of exercise. So they were very clean, and they did a decent amount of exercise. And then it talks about the vision quest. This is mentioned periodically throughout Kaya's books because she's kind of getting ready for it. So it typically happened around 12 or 13. They went alone into an isolated place, deep in the woods or high on a mountaintop. They ate no food and drank little water. And they would get basically a spirit keeper would come to them and would grant the child kind of special powers. So, and the identity of this spirit animal was private. So it kept primarily between family and close friends. It also talks about the prized possessions of their horses and how they decorated them and what they look like. And then a world of danger. So it talks about the things that she had to fear, from raiders to wolves to various different animals and bears. So, and wildfires, because that's mentioned in her books as well. And then it talks kind of about the present, where it has the spiritual brother, where currently the Nez Perez tribe, they, I think it was the National Forest Service, brought a pack of wolves down from Canada, and the Nez Perez took responsibility to take care of the pack, essentially, because they're trying to bring the wolves back into the United States because they belong here. And we've messed up the ecosystem without them. So then it talks, there's one of their other legend about the bear, and how when the Nimi Poo this Nimi Poo boy was not afraid of the bear showed it everything and how to survive and where everything was in the land. Then it talks about matchmaking and how parents would choose the children's matches, and how one of the women elders from the boys' tribe would come to the girls' tribe and watch her and her family to see if she would make a good wife, and then the boy would come to the girls' tribe to show that he would make a good provider. So that was how things happened. It talks about the dresses from deer, which is how they made things, and the different shells and things. The blue beads was something that they traded with other tribes that had traded with Russians, and different beads and things that would come through trading. So while they weren't directly interacting with Europeans, they were getting trade goods for them. Of course, that's how they got their horses. So it talks about how they would adorn themselves in different ways. And the art of weaving. So they wove baskets, and this is where they carried things. This was what they packed things into, and girls learned how to do this very young. And it talks about painting and how they would paint the little packets that they would store things in, including food and clothing and special items. And it talks about gifts from the land and their seasons. And they divided the year according to seasonal events that were important to their way of life. The season when cold air travels. I'm not going to try to pronounce the season when it is difficult to build fires because fuel is scarce. The season of new plants and flowers beginning to blossom. The season for the first harvest of roots. The season for making loaves from the cow's root. The season of melting snow in the mountains. The season for traveling to high country to dig roots. The season when eels run in the streams. So they did, in fact, eat eels. The season when blue-black salmon run in the streams. The season of midsummer hot weather. The season when Chinook salmon reach the canyon streams. The season when the fall salmon run upstream and the fingerlings journey down the river. So the fingerlings are small fish. The season when the tamarack trees lose their needles and the trees change color. The season when trees drop their leaves and cold comes to the high country. The season when new life begins in deer and elk. So that was how they determined the times of year. It depends on what they were doing. And then it talks about a bountiful harvest. So this is where it's talking about the camas root and the different plants and berries and things that they would gather to, and the thing below here, these are the camas fields. Most of them, unfortunately, has been destroyed by now. It talks about the sacred of the salmon and how they would capture the salmon. And unfortunately, I don't know if it talks about it here. The U.S. put a bunch of dams up that are disrupting the flow of the rivers. And so a lot of the native tribes are fighting to get these rivers at least partially taken down, because a lot of them aren't serving a purpose anymore anyway. And they're just causing destruction because it's disrupting the way nature flows. It talks about the buffalo, where they would go for several years, and they different tracks. They would go the highland track, but unfortunately they would interact. There's a shortcut, and it was shorter, but they would interact with the Blackfeet, which is, they're not friendly with them, or they could go south, which is longer. So, but it talks about how they would use the buffalo. It talks about different friends and enemies, so it talks about their trading partners and those that they really didn't get along with. Then it talks about Lewis and Clark. So it talks about this young woman who, when she was a girl, she was taken captive by Blackfeet warriors during a raid on her village. She was taken far from her homelands to Canada, where she was then traded to a tribe that lived even further east. And she was traded from village to village until eventually she became the property of a kindly French Canadian. The man took her to live with him among the white people in central Canada. They treated her well with kindness and gave her medicine for her trachoma, or eye disease. But she still wanted to go home. So she escaped. She wandered through the mountains until she became weak with starvation. And then she stumbled upon a small band of Salish who were friends with the Nozpriers. And they were able to get her, return her to health, and then take her home. And then years later, when the white man came to the Nez William Clark and Meriwether Lewis came, she says, "Be nice." Not a good idea. And then it talks about Lewis and Clark. And then we go into the Christians coming in and trying to convert them, trying to make them farm. The starting of the Indian schools. So they destroyed. This is the beginning of the destruction. And then they signed various treaties, but unfortunately when gold was found on their land, it's like, nope, we're going to rewrite this and go away. Then it talks about how some of them didn't want to go. They didn't want to sign the treaties. They fled. Unfortunately, none of their other tribes would help them. And eventually they had to surrender because they were dying. And there was, in fact, a slaughter in a place called, look here, Big Hole. And that's what you kind of see in this picture, where there's teepees that are erected now. At least teepee poles to represent the people who were many women, and basically mostly women and children who died. It talks about modern Nimi Poo, how the wolves are being brought back, how they're teaching their language again, and they're teaching their ways again. They're bringing back their culture. So I believe that's, and it talks about the powwows and the dancing. But how they are joining again, and this is kind of how it ends. It's a beautiful painting here. So that is this book. So I actually enjoyed this. It has a great deal of information. It's great history. It tells both about the past and the present of the Nimi Poo or the Nez Perce tribe. So highly recommend this, either reading it before or after you finish her main series, because again, this provides a great deal of information and a lot of great historical detail. So that is it. I'll put that book down for this review. We are actually almost done with Kea, even though it hasn't. I am still filming in December of 2025, but I have a couple more reviews, and then we will move on to the Revolutionary War and Felicity. So if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. I will be covering a lot of decent amount of American history up until the 1970s, so I'll definitely be skipping over plots because we'll go from the 1940s into the 1970s. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, and then of course you can check out the rest of the channel. I have quite a few videos. So if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.